The world had once been a place of warmth, of forests, oceans, and cities bustling with life. But that was before the endless winter began. What was once just another storm, another harsh season, soon became the new reality. It didn't stop. The ice came slowly, but it never left. It crept across the earth, swallowing everything it touched. Years later, the world was a wasteland of ice. People had adapted, of course. They had no choice. But something else, something ancient, was waking from the cold. Creatures that had been extinct for centuries were stirring from the glacier, and with them, a new danger emerged, one that threatened to finish what the ice had started. In a world where survival was the only law, a small group of survivors set out on a mission, one that could save them all, or doom them to the frozen abyss. The wind stung Emily's face as she pulled her scarf tighter. Her breath formed icy clouds in the frigid air, and her boots crunched against the thick layer of snow beneath her feet. The world was silent except for the howling wind that seemed to never stop. Just a few more miles, Daniel's voice cut through the quiet, gruff and focused. Keep moving. Emily glanced over at Daniel, the leader of their small group. His face was weathered, his expression a mask of determination. He wasn't one to show fear, but Emily could see it in the way he kept scanning the horizon, as if expecting something to appear at any moment. The others, Jason and Michael, were behind her, their movements sluggish, their faces pale from the cold. "We've been out here too long," Emily muttered, her voice barely audible against the wind. "The storm's been raging for days. Are we sure there's a shelter up ahead?" Daniel didn't answer immediately. He didn't have to. The truth was, no one was ever sure. In a world like this, shelters were a luxury. They were rare, and those that still existed were often more myth than fact. But Daniel had promised that they were close. Another howl echoed in the distance. Emily froze. The wind carried with it a sound that didn't belong in this frozen wasteland, something unnatural. She couldn't place it, but it sent a chill through her that was colder than the air itself. "Did you hear that?" Emily asked, her voice shaky. Daniel nodded, his expression darkening. "Stay close." They moved faster now, urgency creeping into their steps. The snowstorm around them seemed to intensify, the wind biting at their skin. Emily's heart pounded, but it wasn't from the cold. It was from the primal fear that had taken root in her chest. Something was out there. Something alive. And it wasn't human. Hours later, they finally reached the shelter, an old, dilapidated structure buried under layers of ice and snow. It looked abandoned, but they had no choice. The cold was becoming unbearable, and the storm showed no signs of letting up. Inside, it was dark and quiet, save for the sound of their breath and the occasional creak of the old walls. The shelter wasn't much: metal walls, a few overturned crates, and a small fire pit. But it was shelter. For now, it would have to do. Emily collapsed onto the floor, exhausted. "This doesn't feel right," she said, her voice hushed. Daniel crouched beside her, his eyes scanning the dim room. "What do you mean?" "I don't know," she said, shaking her head. "It's too quiet. No animals. No sounds. Not even the wind." Daniel frowned. "The storm's playing tricks on us," but Emily couldn't shake the feeling. Something was wrong. The cold felt different tonight, sharper, like it was closing in on them. And there was that sound, faint, but unmistakable. A low growl, distant yet distinct. "I'm telling you, there's something out there," Emily said, her voice tense. "Something isn't right." Daniel gave her a hard look, his expression unreadable. We've been out here too long. You're hearing things. But Emily wasn't sure. There was something in the air, something she couldn't explain. The storm raged on, and the hours stretched into a restless silence. They took turns keeping watch, though no one spoke much. The unease had settled over them like a heavy fog. Just as Emily was beginning to drift off to sleep, a sound pierced the quiet. It was faint at first, like the rustling of snow. But then it grew louder, a series of heavy thuds, the unmistakable sound of something large moving through the snow. "Daniel," Emily whispered urgently. "You have to hear this." He was on his feet in an instant, motioning for the others to stay quiet. They all huddled by the small window of the shelter, peering out into the blizzard. For a long time, they saw nothing. Just snow and ice swirling in the wind. And then, in the distance, a shadow moved. The creature was massive, its form barely visible in the whiteout, but the shape was unmistakable. It was large, hulking, and covered in matted fur. A mammoth. But not like any mammoth they had ever seen. Is that a mammoth?" Jason whispered, his voice tight with disbelief. "It's not supposed to be here," Daniel muttered, his eyes narrowing. "It shouldn't be alive. Not after all these years." Emily took a step back, her heart racing. "What the hell is happening?" Daniel didn't answer. He was too focused, too intent on the creature outside. "We have to move. Now." The group didn't wait to see if the creature was alone. They gathered what supplies they had left and set out once again, the storm still howling around them. But now, their path felt more dangerous than ever. Daniel was quiet, his brow furrowed in thought. He'd been studying the old records of the world before the storm. The stories of creatures frozen in the ice, of ancient experiments that went horribly wrong. And now, they were seeing it firsthand. Things that should have been long gone, things that had been extinct for centuries, were coming back. And it wasn't just the creatures. "I think I know what's happening," Daniel said suddenly, breaking the silence. "The storm. It's not natural. It was engineered." Emily looked at him, confused. "What do you mean?" "The ancients," Daniel explained, his voice low. "They thought they could control the climate. They tried to harness the power of the ice, of the storm itself, and use it as a weapon. But it didn't work. The balance was destroyed. The cold didn't just freeze the world. It froze everything, life, ecosystems, even time itself. And now the energy is starting to destabilize." Jason looked at him, fear creeping into his eyes. "Are you saying the storm is alive?" "No," Daniel said firmly. "But something is feeding it. Something has been waking up, and if we don't stop it, if we don't find the source, it'll consume everything." The group pressed on, their destination unknown, but their goal clear. They had to find the source of the energy that had triggered the endless winter, and stop it before it destroyed the last remnants of life on Earth. Hours passed, and the storm grew fiercer, but there was no turning back now. They had come too far. Finally, they found it, a massive structure buried deep beneath the ice. A complex of ancient machinery, still humming with power. It was a relic from a time long past, a forgotten experiment that had gone horribly wrong. "We have to shut it down," Daniel said, his voice steady but urgent. "This is the core. The source of everything. If we destroy it, the storm will end. The cold will stop." But as they approached the core, a creature emerged from the darkness, a massive, hulking form with glowing eyes. It was not a mammoth, not a saber-tooth. It was something else entirely. Something that had been awakened by the energy of the core. A final battle ensued, one of survival, one that would determine the fate of the Earth. The battle was fierce, but in the end, they succeeded. The creature fell, the core was destroyed, and the storm began to dissipate. The endless winter had finally come to an end. The world, though scarred, had a chance to heal. But nothing would ever be the same again. The creatures, the storms, the cold, they were all part of a history that would never be forgotten. The Earth had fought back, and humanity had survived. For now, the dawn of a new world had begun. But the question remained, would it be enough?